Let's see, we are going to start chapter 32 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and this is the visit to the Sinti Brahmo Samaj. Okay. October 19th, 1884. On this day, Sri Ramakrishna again visited the Sinti Brahmo Samaj. It was the occasion of the autumn festival of the Samaj, which was being celebrated at Beni Madhav Pali's garden house. The house was decorated with flowers and greens, flags, and festoons of various colors. Outside, the blue autumn sky with its fleecy clouds was reflected in the water of the lake. Sri Ramakrishna arrived at 4:30 in the afternoon. Entering the hall, he bowed down before the altar. The Brahmo devotees, among them who could be mentioned, Vijay and Trilokya, sat around them. A sub-judge, who was a member of the Brahmo Samaj, was with them. Trilokya was entertaining the devotees with his melodious music. Master to Trilokya, "That song of yours, O Mother, make me mad with thy love. I enjoy it very much. Will you sing it?" Trilokya sang. "O Mother, make me mad with thy love. What need have I of knowledge or reason? Make me mad with thy love's wine. O thou who stealest thy bhaktas' hearts, drown me deep in the sea of thy love. Here in this world, this madhouse of thine, some laugh, some weep, some dance for joy. Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Gauranga, all are drunk with the wine of thy love. O Mother, when shall I be blessed by joining their blissful company?" As he listened to the song, the master's mind underwent a transformation, and presently he went into deep samadhi. Coming down a little to the plane of the sense world, he gave instruction to the devotees. His mind was still charged with a divine experience. His words were spoken as if in a state of intoxication. Gradually, he became fully conscious of the world. Master, "O Mother, I don't want the bliss of a divine inebriation. I shall eat siddhi." To the devotees, by siddhi, I mean the attainment of the spiritual goal and not one of the 8 occult powers. About the occult powers, Sri Krishna said to Arjuna, "Friend, if you find anyone who has acquired even one of the 8 powers, then know for certain he shall not realize me. For powers surely beget pride, and God cannot be realized if there's the slightest trace of pride." According to a school of thought, there are 4 classes of devotees: the pravartika, the sadhaka, the siddha, and the siddha of the siddha. He who has just begun religious life, is a pravartika. Such a person puts their denominational marks on the body and their forehead, wears a rosary around the neck, and scrupulously follows outer conventions. The sadhaka has advanced farther. Their desire for outer show has become less. The sadhaka has advanced farther. He longs for the realization of God and prays to him sincerely. They repeat the name of God and call on him with a guileless heart. Now, whom should we call the siddha, the perfected? One who has absolute conviction that God exists and is the sole doer. One who has seen God, he who has seen God. And one who is the siddha, he is the one who has not merely seen God, but he has intimately talked with him as Father, Son, or Beloved. It's one thing to believe beyond a doubt that fire exists in wood, but it is quite another to get fire from the wood, cook the rice with its help, appease one's hunger, and so be satisfied. They're entirely 2 different things. No one can put a limit to spiritual experience. If you refer to one experience, there is another beyond that, and still another, and so on. In an ecstatic mood, referring to the Brahmos, they are Brahmagyanis. They believe in a formless deity. That is good. To the Brahmo devotees, be firm in one ideal, either in God with form or in the formless God. Then alone will you realize God. Otherwise not. With firm and unwavering belief, the followers of God with form will realize him, as will those who speak of him as formless. You may eat a cake with icing either straight up or sideways. It will taste sweet either way. All laugh. But you must have firm conviction. You must pray to him wholeheartedly. Do you know what the God of worldly people is like? It's like children saying to one another while at play, "I swear by God." They have learnt the word from the quarrels of their aunts or grandmothers. Or it's like God to a dandy. The dandy, all spick and span, his red lips from chewing betel leaf, walks in the garden, cane in hand, plucking a flower, exclaims to his friend, "Ah, what a beautiful flower God has made." But this feeling of a worldly person is momentary. It lasts as long as a drop of water on a red-hot frying pan. You must be firm in one ideal. Otherwise, you cannot get the gem at the bottom of the ocean. You cannot pick up the gems if you only float on the surface. With these words, the Master sang in a sweet voice that had bewitched the hearts of devotees like Keshav. Dive deep, O mind. Dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. The devotees felt like they were in paradise itself. Master, to the Brahmos, dive deep. Learn to love God. Plunge into divine love. You see, I have heard how you pray. Why do you Brahmos dwell on the glories of God so much? Is there such a great need of your saying over and over again, "Oh God, you have created the sky, the great oceans, the lunar world, the solar world, and the stellar world"? Everybody is wonderstruck at the mere sight of a rich man's garden house. People become speechless at the sight of the trees, the flowers, the ponds, the drawing room, the pictures. But alas, how few are they who seek the owner of all these? Only one or two inquire after him. He who seeks God with a longing heart can see him, talk to him as I'm talking to you. Believe my words when I say that God can be seen. But to whom am I saying these words? Who's going to believe me? Can one find God in the sacred books? By reading the scriptures, one may feel at the most that God exists. But God does not reveal himself to a man unless he dives deep. Only after such a plunge, after the revelation of God through his grace, is one's doubt destroyed. You may read scriptures by the thousands and recite thousands of texts, but unless you plunge into God with yearning of heart, you will not comprehend him. By mere scholarship, you may fool man, but not God. Scriptures and books, what can one achieve with these alone? Nothing can be realized without his grace. Strive with a longing heart for his grace. Through his grace, you will see him and he will talk to you. Subjudge. Sir, does God show more grace to one than to another? If so, he can be accused of the fault of partiality. Master, what are you saying? Do you mean to say that the sun and the glowworm are the same, though both give light? Ishwar Vidyasagar asked me the same question. He said, is it a fact, sir, that God gives more power to one and less than another? God, I said, exists in every being as the all-pervading spirit. He's in the ant as well as in me. But there are different manifestations of his power in different beings. If they're all the same, then why do we come to see you, attracted by your renown? Have you grown a pair of horns? Oh, no, it's not like that. You have compassion. You have scholarship. There's a greater degree of these virtues in you than in others. That is the reason you are so well known. Don't you see that there are men who can single-handedly defeat 100 persons? Again, one man takes to his heels in fear of another. You see such a person too. If there are not different manifestations of power in different beings, then why did people respect Keshav Sen so much? It is said in the Gita that if a man is respected and honored by many, whether it be for his scholarship or his music or his oratory or anything else, then you may know for certain that he's endowed with a special divine power. To the subjudge, why don't you accept what he says? Master, sharply to the Brahmo, what sort of man are you? To accept words without conviction? Why, that's hypocrisy. I see you're only a counterfeit. The Brahmo was much embarrassed, no doubt. Subjudge. Sir, must we renounce the world? Master, no. Why should you? A person can realize God even in the world, but at the beginning they must spend a few days in solitude. They must practice spiritual discipline in a solitary place. They should have a room in the house where they can come only for their meals. Kesha, Pratap, and others said to me, Sir, we follow the ideal of King Janaka. Mere words don't make a King Janaka, I said. How many austerities King Janaka had to perform in solitude, standing on his head and so on. Do something first, then you become a King Janaka. You can see a person writing English fluently, but can they do that at the very start? Perhaps they were the child of poor parents. They were a cook in a family, earned their meals by service. Perhaps they had to struggle hard to go on with their studies. It's after all these efforts that they can now write fluent English. I said to Keshav, send further. How can a worldly man be cured of a serious disease unless he goes into solitude? A worldly man is suffering from delirious fever, as it were. Suppose there are pickled tamarind and jars of water in the room of such a patient. Now, how can you expect him to get rid of the disease? See, the very mention of pickled tamarind is making my mouth water. All laugh. You can very well imagine what will happen if the tamarind is actually put in front of me. To a man, a woman is that pickled tamarind, and his desire for enjoyment, the jars of water. There is neither end nor limit to his desire for worldly enjoyment. And the things are in the patient's very room. Can you expect the patient to get rid of the delirious fever in this fashion? He must be removed for a few days to another place where there is neither pickled tamarind nor water pots. Then he will be cured. After that, if he returns to his old room, he will have nothing to fear. Lust and greed cannot do any harm to a person who lives in the world after attaining God. Only then can they lead a detached life in the world as King Janaka did. But they have to be careful at the very beginning. They must practice spiritual discipline in strict solitude. You see, the peepal tree, when young, is fenced around to protect it from cattle. But there is no need for the fence when the trunk grows thick and strong. There is no harm that will be done to the tree if an elephant is tied to it. Lust and greed will not be able to harm you in the least if you go home and lead a householder's life after increasing your spiritual strength and developing love for the lotus feet of God through the practice of spiritual discipline in solitude. A man sets milk in a quiet place to curdle, then he extracts butter from the curd. After once extracting the butter of devotion and knowledge from the milk of the mind, if you keep that transformed mind in the water of the world, it will float in the world unattached. But if the mind is in its unripe state, that is to say, when it's just like liquid milk and it's kept in the water of the world, then the milk and the water will get mixed. In that case, it will be impossible for the mind to float unattached in the world. Live in the world, but in order to realize God, hold fast to his lotus feet with one hand, and with the other hand do your duties. When you get a respite from your duties, cling to God's lotus feet with both hands, live in solitude, meditate on him, and serve him ceaselessly. Subjudge joyously. Sir, these are very beautiful words indeed. Of course, one must practice spiritual discipline in solitude, but we forget all about it. We think we become King Janaka outright. The master and the devotees laughed. I feel very happy and peaceful even to hear that there's no need to give up the world and that God can be realized from home as well. Master, why should you give up the world? Since you must fight, it is wise for you to fight from a fort. You must fight against your sense organs, against your hunger and thirst. Therefore, you will be wise to face the battle from the world. Further, in this Kali Yuga, the life of man depends on food. If one day you have nothing to eat, then you're going to forget all about God. A man once said to his wife, I'm going to leave the world. She was a sensible woman. She said, why should you wander about? If you don't have to knock at 10 doors for your stomach's sake, go. But if that is the case, then better to live in one place. Again, I say, why should you give up the world? You will find it more convenient at home. You won't have to worry about food. You may even live with your wife. It isn't harmful. You will find near at hand all that the body needs at different times. When you are ill, you will have someone near you to nurse you. Sages like Janaka, Vyasa, and Vasishta lived in the world after attaining knowledge. They fenced with two swords, the one of knowledge and the one of action. Subjudge. How can we know that we have knowledge? Master. When one has knowledge, one does not see God anymore at a distance. One does not think of him anymore as he. He becomes this. Then he is seen in one's own heart. God dwells in every human being. He who seeks God realizes him. Subjudge. Sir, I'm a sinner. How can I say that God dwells in me? Master. That's the one trouble with you brabos. With you it's always sin and sin. That's the Christian view, isn't it? Once a man gave me a Bible. A part of it was read to me, and it was full of that one thing, sin and sin. One must have such faith that one can say, I have uttered the name of God. I've repeated the name of Rama or Hari. How can I be a sinner? One must have faith in the glory of God's name. Subjudge. How can one have such faith? Master. Have passionate love for God. In one of your Brahmo songs says, one of your Brahmo songs says, O Lord, is it ever possible to know thee without love, however much one may perform worship and sacrifice? Pray to God in secret with yearning, that you may have passionate attachment and devotion to him. Shed tears for him. A man sheds a jugful of tears because his wife is sick, or he's losing money, or because he is worrying about getting a job. But tell me, who ever weeps for God? Trilokya. Sir, where's people's leisure? They must serve their English masters. This, of course, was during the time of the colonial period. Master. Well, then give God the power of attorney. If a man entrusts his affairs to a good person, will the latter do him any harm? With all the sincerity of your heart, resign yourself to God and drive all your worries out of your mind. Do whatever duties he's assigned to you. The kitten does not have a calculating mind. It only goes mew, mew. It lies in the kitchen contentedly if the mother leaves it there, and only calls the mother crying mew, mew. It has the same feeling of contentment when the mother cat puts it on a soft bed of the master of the house. It only cries for its mother. Subjudge. Sir, we are householders. How long should we perform our worldly duties? Master. Surely you have duties to perform. You must bring up your children, support your wife, and provide for her in case of your death. If you don't, then I shall call you unkind. Sages like Shukadeva had compassion. He who has no compassion is no man. Subjudge. How long should one support one's children? Master. As long as they've not reached their majority. When the chick becomes a full-grown bird and can look after itself, then the mother bird pecks it and doesn't allow it to come near her. I'll laugh. Subjudge. What is the householder's duty to his wife? Master. You should give her spiritual advice and support her during your lifetime and provide for her livelihood after your death, if she is a chaste wife. But if you are intoxicated with the knowledge of God, then you have no more duties to perform. Then God himself will think about your morrow if you yourself cannot do so. God himself will think about your family if you are intoxicated with him. If a landlord dies, leaving behind a minor son, the guardian appointed by the court takes charge of the son. These are all points of law. You know them. Subjudge. Yes, sir. Vijay. Ah, priceless words. God himself carries on his shoulders all the responsibilities of a person who thinks of him with single-minded devotion and is mad with divine love. A minor gets his guardian without seeking him, alas. When shall I have that state of mind? How lucky are they that feel that way? Trilokya. Is it ever possible, sir, to have true knowledge of God while living in the world. Can one realize God here? Master with a smile. Why do you worry? You are enjoying both treacle and refined sugar. All laugh. You are living in the world with your mind in God. Isn't that true? Why shouldn't a man realize God in the world? Certainly he can. Trilokya. What are the signs of a householder's having attained knowledge? Master. His tears will flow, and the hair on his body will stand on end. No sooner does he hear the sweet name of God than the hair on his body stands on end from sheer delight, and the tears roll down his cheeks. A man cannot get rid of body consciousness as long as he is attached to worldly things and loves lust and greed. As he becomes less and less attached to worldly things, he approaches nearer and nearer to the knowledge of the self. He becomes less and less conscious of the body. He attains self-knowledge when his worldly attachment totally disappears. Then he realizes that body and soul are two separate things. It is very difficult to separate with a knife the kernel of a coconut from the shell before the milk inside has dried up. When the milk dries up, the kernel rattles inside the shell. At that time, it loosens itself from the shell. Then the fruit is called a dry coconut. The sign of a person's having realized God is that they become like a dry coconut. They become utterly free from the consciousness that they are the body. They do not feel happy or unhappy with the happiness or unhappiness of the body. They do not seek the comforts of the body. He roams about in the world as a Jivan Mukta, one liberated in life. The devotee of Kali is a Jivan Mukta full of eternal bliss. When you find that the very mention of God's name brings tears to your eyes and makes your hair stand on end, then you will know that you have freed yourself from attachment to lust and greed and have attained God. If the matches are dry, you get a spark by striking only one of them. But if they are damp, you don't get a spark from one even if you strike 50. You only waste matches. Similarly, if your mind is soaked in the pleasure of worldly things, in lust and greed, then God consciousness will not be kindled in you. You may try 1,000 times, but all your efforts will be futile. But no sooner does attachment to worldly pleasure dry up than the spark of God flashes forth. Trilokya. What is the way to dry up craving for worldly pleasure? Master. Pray to the Divine Mother with a longing heart. Her vision dries up all craving for the world and completely destroys all attachment to lust and greed. It happens instantly if you think of her as your own mother. She's by no means a godmother. She's your own mother. With the yearning heart, persist in your demands on her. The child holds to the skirt of its mother and begs a penny of her to buy a kite. Perhaps the mother is gossiping with her friends. At first she refuses to give the penny and says to the child, "No, you can't have it. Your daddy has asked me not to give you money. When he comes home, I'll ask him about it. You'll get into trouble if you play with the kite now." The child begins to cry and will not give up his demand. Then the mother says to her friends, "Oh, excuse me for a moment. Let me pacify this child." Immediately she unlocks the cash box with a click and throws the child a penny. You too must force your demand on the Divine Mother. She will come to you without fail. I once said the same thing to some Sikhs when they visited the temple at Dakshineshwar. They were conversing in front of the Kali temple. They said, "God is compassionate." "Why compassionate?" I asked. They said, "Why, revered sir, he constantly looks after us. He gives us righteousness and wealth. He provides us with food." I said, "Suppose," I said, "a man has children. Who will look after them and provide them with food? Their own father or a man from another village?" Subjudge. Is not God then compassionate, sir? Master. Why should you think that? I just made a remark. What I mean to say is that God is our very own. We can exert force on him. With one's own people, one can even go as far as to say, "You rascal, won't you give it to me?" To the subjudge. Let me ask you one thing. Are vanity and egotism the result of knowledge or of ignorance? Egotism is the very nature of tamas. It's begotten of ignorance. On account of the barrier of ego, one does not see God. All trouble comes to an end when the ego dies. It is futile to be egotistic. Neither body nor wealth will last. Once a drunkard was looking at the image of Durga. At the sight of her decorations, he said, "Well, mother, however you may fix yourself up, after 2 or 3 days, they will drag you and throw you in the Ganges." All laugh. So I say to you all, be you a judge or anybody else, it is all for 2 days only. Therefore you should give up all vanity and pride. The characteristics of sattva, rajas, and tamas are very different. Egotism, sleep, gluttony, lust, anger, and the like are traits of people with tamas. People with rajas entangle themselves with many activities. Such a person has clothes all spick and span. His house is immaculately clean. A portrait of the queen hangs on the wall in his drawing room. When he worships God, he wears a silk cloth. He has a string of rudraksha beads around his neck, and in between the beads he puts a few gold ones. When someone comes to visit the worship hall in his house, he himself acts as a guide. After showing the hall, he says to a visitor, "Please come this way, sir. There are other things too. The floor is of white marble, and the Nat Mandir with its exquisite carvings." Then he gives in charity to make a show of it. But a person endowed with sattva is quiet and peaceful. So far as dress is concerned, anything will do. He earns only enough money to give his stomach the simplest of food, and he never flatters people to get money. His house is out of repair. He never worries about his child's clothing. He does not hanker for name and fame. His worship, charity, and meditation are all done in secret. People don't know about them at all. He meditates inside his mosquito curtain. People think that he doesn't sleep well at night. For that reason, he sleeps late in the morning. Sattva is the last step on the stairs. Next is the roof. As soon as sattva is acquired, there is no further delay in attaining God. One steps forward and God is realized. To the subjudge, "Didn't you say that all men were equal? Now you see that there are so many varieties of human nature." There are still other classes of people. For instance, those who are eternally free, those who have attained liberation, those struggling for liberation, and those entangled in the world. So many varieties of people. Sages like Narada and Shukadeva are eternally free. They are like a steamship which not only crosses the ocean, but can carry big animals, even an elephant. Further, the soul that is eternally free is like the superintendent of an estate. After bringing one part of the estate under control, he goes to another. Those struggling for liberation strive heart and soul to free themselves from the net of the world. 1 or 2 of them may get out of the net. They're called liberated. The souls that are eternally free are like clever fish. They're never caught in the net. But the souls that are entangled, involved in worldliness, never come to their senses. If you speak of God before them, they at once leave the place. They say, "Why God now? We should think of him at the hour of death." But when they lie in their deathbeds, they say to their wives or children, "Why have you put so many wicks in the lamp? Use only one wick. Otherwise, too much oil is going to be burnt." While dying, they think of their wives and children and weep, "Alas, what will happen to them after my death?" The entangled souls repeat those very actions that make them suffer so much. They're like the camel, which eats thorny bushes till the blood streams from its mouth, but still will not give them up. Such a man may have lost his son and be stricken with grief, but he still will have children year after year. He may ruin himself by his daughter's marriage, but still he will go on having daughters every year. And he says, "What can I do? It's just my luck." When he goes to a holy place, he doesn't have time to think of God. He almost kills himself, carrying bundles for his wife. Entering the temple, he's very eager to give his child the holy water to drink or to make him roll on the floor. But he's no time for his own devotions. Those bound creatures slave for their masters to earn food for themselves and their families. And they earn money by lying, cheating, flattery. They laugh at those who think of God and meditate on him, and they call them lunatics. So, you see how many different types of men there are. You said that all men were created equal, but how many varieties of men there are? Some have more power and some less. The entangled creatures attached to worldliness talk only of worldly things in the hour of death. What will it avail such people if they outwardly repeat the name of God, take the bath in the Ganges, or visit sacred places? If they cherish within themselves attachment to the world, it must show up at the hour of death. While dying, they rave nonsense. Perhaps they cry out in a delirium, turmeric powder, seasoning, bay leaf. The singing parrot, when at ease, repeats the holy name of Radha and Krishna, but when it is seized by a cat, it utters its own natural sound. It squawks, "Caw, caw." It is said in the Gita that whatever one thinks of in the hour of death, one becomes in the next life. King Bharata gave up his body exclaiming, "Deer, deer," and was born as a deer in his next life. But if man dies thinking of God, then he attains God and does not have to come back to the life of this world. And that's a good place to stop. Are there any questions or problems or discussions we want to have? Caw, caw. Okay. All right. Then I think I'll give a couple of announcements here. Tomorrow, Swami Sumanasananda, our assistant minister, will speak on what is spiritual initiation. And then on next Wednesday, we will have a reading of Swami Ramakrishna, Apostle to the South, at 5 p.m. here, Wednesday. And on Saturday, we will have, again, another reading from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna at 5 p.m. Okay, and that's it. Okay, Devi Prana, everything okay by you? Okay, we're getting a blessing by Devi Prana here. Okay, good. Thumbs up and a blessing. Okay, great. All right then. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you for joining, everybody.